Next up, we have Power Glove. And the thing is, especially depending on what class you're playing, there are just so many times where I'm like so happy to get a Power Glove. The damage that it provides for both normal damage and crit damage is just amazing. Like, especially when you're trying to play a usual Spin Venter comp, except on Peglin, you really, really love having that extra +1/+1. And then on like Belen or Spin Venter, you like having both the damage that you prefer as well as the damage that you don't prefer for when you're missing. Like it's just really nice all around. And even Spinventa just appreciates the +2/+3 boost to some of their crucial orbs. It's a really big deal. So yeah, you're really happy to get Power Glove basically all the time. Right? So definitely let's yeah. I think around is fair. Do you think +1 to circle is definitely amazing though? Puppet. Now Puppet is definitely a passive that exists. Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair spotter. This is around about where I put it last time. You're not going to complain about getting a puppet, especially for free. But between other choices, you're almost certainly going to pick other choices. There's some maps where you're really happy to have puppet, crossbow, minotaur, sometimes mirror fights, because mirror fights you can just have a massive smack for like 800 damage immediately, and then you just take a whole bunch of reflect damage. And I'm sure there are a few more good examples, but there are a few fights where you're happy to have puppet. Sometimes it's preventing like misnavigation damage. It's decent, but like yeah. Alright, region populator. Last time I put it in like the bottom of S++. I'm gonna be honest, I think it's like one of the best passes in the game. Like, yeah, I think that's a very fair spot for it. Current region populator is really, really good. So if you happen to have any amount of extra bomb stuff, it's going to be incredible for you. But like, even if you don't have the extra bomb stuff, you're still just happy to have it there. Maybe you have like an alchemist's cookbook, you're generating so many more bombs. Like there are just so many useful combos, so many maps where it's nice to just have access to those bombs again. Because a lot of the time, because of Cruci 12, there's going to be like 40 health left over after you've used up all the bombs on the map. Just having them respawn back in, granting you more momentum for your shots, is just actually really, really good. Like in terms of passives that I'm probably the happiest to get from an elite consistently, Recombobulator is almost number one, if not number one. Which, like, it probably is, but there are some passives that I do love just because they're insanely, insanely fun as well as very, very decent. And that leads us perfectly onto a Refreshing Punch. Also an incredible, incredible passive. I think I want to put it. Yeah, yeah, it's very fair. Even when you only have one refresh on the board, it's still doing so much for you. And unlike bombs, because bombs is slightly different, right? Sometimes bombs will take two hits, not one. Whereas with the Refreshing Punch, it's probably only going to be taking one hit. Well, sorry, probably. It only takes one hit to pop the refresh. Then you get the immediate value, and then you can get more immediate value. Any extra refreshes you add onto the board just become incredible. As well as this is one of the strongest passives in the game when you consider it as part of a combo. Because when you can combine it with Luke's Rest for later, you kind of just win. Like it's just such a good combo. Refreshive. Refreshive feels amazing to have. It's really, really nice. It's like having one extra refresh on the board, except you can consistently get it back. Some comps just really adore having Refreshive. I do like where I put it previously, high S. Do I think that it deserves higher? Potentially. It closes up the holes in your comps so well. That's the thing. But definitely, it's not really. It's probably not the one that's making the biggest impact for actually giving you a comp. It's just making it so that your shots are consistently pretty good. Still need to have some kind of thing which is giving you a win condition. I don't know, it's very fair to put it higher than that, but I think that's a very fair spot for it. Maybe even insta-pick. Like, I basically do almost insta-pick it. Or would I rather have your refresh also crit or refreshive? Because it's actually pretty close. I don't know. I think I'll leave it there, but it definitely could be higher. Your refresh also crit. Absolutely nowhere near as strong as your crit also refresh. But your refresh also crit is just a great way to get some good consistent damage. Let's not talk about it on Balan. You don't need to consider it on Balan. But for all of the other classes, they're really happy to have access to that crit damage. And with the refresh moving every shot, it's a great way to get. Sorry, the refresh not moving every shot. It's a great way to consistently hit crits for your big shots. Your big, like, Dag Orb shots, your big level 3 Splat Orb shots, or your big Rub Orb shots. There are a whole bunch of orbs that really love having access to the crit damage a bit easier. And this does it, because here's the thing. You already want to add more refreshes to your board. So in doing so, you're adding more crits to the board. Like, yeah, that's really good for 3 out of 4 classes. Then we get to Paladin. Paladin just absolutely despises this passive and really should not be picking it up. Um, is that going to stop me from picking it up? No. Are there definitely some Paladin builds where you're going to want it? 100%. But, most of the time you probably should be. Ring of Indignation. Now, I don't know if Ring of Indignation was changed since the last time I did the tier list. It looks like it was. Kind of like here, pretty much. Second row. Except there's a whole nother, whole lot more passes behind it. Where do I think a Ring of Indignation sits? Alright, for like Crucible 20, if I get a Ring of Indignation early, I am insanely happy. Like, I'm really, really happy. It's definitely one of my favorite passives to hit just because the insurance it provides is incredible. It's just a safety net of you might lose 40 health in this fight, but you can't lose more. And as it turns out, there are a whole bunch of fights in the game, especially in Area 1, where having that kind of setup is just so nice. It's just so incredible. What is it for Ghost? Not favorable. Not favorable to you. Still need to find a lot of damaging in the Ghost fight. Or potentially just flat healing. I don't know. But yeah, no, I really like having this passive. It can provide a breakpoint in area 2. It works great with other AoE sources. And generally, like the insurance, as I said, the insurance it provides is just amazing. Persist. Now, I think I'm going to be rating Persist perhaps slightly higher than I did last time. No, I did not. Wow. No, I think I'm basically putting it in exactly the same spot. Persist is actually very, very decent. Now, you really shouldn't slash can't take Persist early on. Um, it's a passive where you can just completely sink yourself by taking a Persist. However, the second your deck has good orbs, or perhaps they're even orbs like Restorable or Potionable, where you really want to be shooting them a second time because they're really good orbs to shoot. Because let's be real, most of the time shooting your Restorable is going to be like more or equally valuable to what the enemies are doing that turn. And just being able to have one more of those each time can be really, really nice, especially since they're also orbs like Echo Bright, where persist on your Echo. Sign me up. Um, oh my god, I just had a hilarious idea for a boss passive. It's like you have one extra discard at 999. Persist. It's a really bad idea, but it's kind of funny. Um, not even just 999, but like excessive amounts of persist, so that you get to keep shooting the one shot constantly. Just seeing where that can go. Yeah, no, persist is definitely not something you want to have when your deck is full of pebbles, or worse, right? It's a bit hard to get worse than pebbles. Well, it depends on what comp you're playing. But a lot of the time, you will appreciate having the extra solid shots that it will provide. Short stack. Now, short stack does do a few things. I think that it's pretty fair to put it. Let's put it like high. Okay, yeah, no, very fair, very fair. I think I'll put it like high A. Short stack is not the easiest passive to pick up. If you're picking it up and you have, say, let's say only one crit on the board and no other damage sources, short stack is really not going. You probably shouldn't pick it up whatsoever. It's really not good there. But if you have an orb, let's say you have even just +1 starting your circle, you're much happier to pick up short stack because now you're boosting crit damage. You can easily aim for crits, and you're still not really losing any damage for normal shots. But you have short stack to where you can find like 2 extra crits on the board, which would be pretty amazing. Or like extra crit sources, or maybe even like a Betsy's Hedge to fully counteract it. Like there are a few ways you can set yourself up for short stack actually just being a nice passive. As it turns out, baseline it being effectively a complex claw is just very playable. Especially if you've got guaranteed crits. If you've got a source of guaranteed crits, short stacks become amazing. And then of course it has the amazing synergy with Fleece, where it works flawlessly with Fleece, right? It's Fleece cares about the difference, and short stack is making that difference much, much wider, which usually is not good if you're not in a good spot for it. But if you are in a good spot for it, it can be absolutely amazing. I've had a few runs where it was indeed absolutely amazing recently. Oh wow, good. That's a good choice. Shrewd Scales. I just saw where I put it, and I put it basically here last time. And yeah, no, I agree with that. 2 bounce per reload is actually a big number. It's a really, really big number. There are a lot of boss passives that incentivize you crunching your damage numbers, and there are a lot of just things overall that really appreciate having good damage. And this is definitely one of the best damage scalers in the game. 2 bounce per reload is a lot. And yes, a lot of the time you are going to want to have like a pretty thick deck. You know, your reloads are going to suck. You're going to want at least like 6-ish real orbs in your deck because you can't find a thin, consistent deck that will actively be beating enemies and providing you with all the win conditions you need because you haven't really hit your passives. Um, and you may not be getting the most use out of it, but even if a fight goes past, like, let's say the 6th turn, you're still going to want that balance quite a lot, and it's going to be a very noticeable difference between the first part of the fight and the second part of the fight. And then, of course, you do have the runs where maybe you only have 2 orbs in your deck, or maybe 3 orbs, but they're really, really good orbs. Let's say like Summoning Circle into Machuska and another Summoning Circle or something. Maybe like Restore. Um, yeah, now suddenly that reloading is looking real tempting because those Machuskas and Summoning Circles absolutely love having access to all of that extra damage. The fact that it's +2/+2 is so good. Now this is fun because this was a really low rated passive before, really low rated. It was all the way down in here or something. Yeah, all the way down in here. And fair. Basically had use with specifically Branch of Ember, and that was it. Now, however, it's blind 2 per bomb. Blind 2 per bomb is a pretty big deal comparatively. It's a pretty big deal. So I think I'll be generous. I haven't really gotten to play around with it that much since the change, so it's a bit hard to get a valid guess for how strong it is. I think putting it as like the last passive in AT is pretty fair. I think it's either low A or high B. It's effectively acting as like a Flaunty Gauntlets, except I think it's slightly better on average with in terms of like the high rolls it can achieve. And sure, a lot of the time you're picking up this passive, it's probably not going to do the most, but sometimes you will just hit the Branch of Ember. You'll hit the your debuffs give you Delusion. You'll hit maybe a Mask of Sorrow, and it'll actually matter. And sometimes you have like stand arrows to combine with it, and that's actually really nice because they're 2 pretty efficient ways of applying blind, even if they're both pretty small values. And even just getting 1 dodge, it basically is just acting as another puppet, and puppet's like not horrifically bad, it's just a bit on the lackluster side. Wool Chicken. Yeah, now Wool Chicken's definitely on the opposite end of the spectrum. I am just like so happy to get Wool Chicken consistently. The extra 25 max health is just, it's very noticeable. I definitely feel like I haven't really hit Wool Chicken that much recently, but it's still just a passive that I absolutely love hitting. Just plus 25 health immediately is so insanely valuable. Like, there are definitely times, especially in. You could definitely say Area 2. Area 1, it's a bit hard to say for, unless maybe you've got another 2 more elites ahead of you and you're on like 30 to 40 health. There are definitely times where I'd pick Wool Chicken over Grinding Monster, but that doesn't mean that, like, they're both amazing passives, right? But probably most of the time I wouldn't be pick the Grinding Monster over Wool Chicken. Area 3, though, I'd definitely Wool Chicken over Grinding Monster. Okay, maybe not definitely, but highly likely. Weaponized Envy. I am so looking forward to when Weaponized Envy becomes like Refill Buster is now. Because I think the Refill Buster is, well, it's insane. And the old version was incredibly, incredibly dull, shall we say. Now, Weaponized Envy, when you heal, deal ping damage. Here's the thing. A, it requires you to heal. Do you know what happens if you're healing? It means that you're really happy. Healing is something that can be very, very hard to find depending on your run, and very, very necessary depending on your run. When I say depending on your run, in 99% of your like high accuracy runs, you're going to need healing. So you get value from healing in combat. Now, a lot of the healing that's done in high accuracy actually isn't during combat anymore. You've got to press the button a lot, and there are some passives that are great at getting you out of combat healing. And then we look at the damage for in combat, and it's 3 times. 3 times is nothing. It could be like 30 times. Okay, obviously not 30 times is 30 times is pretty silly. But it's just like you barely even notice it. Sometimes like you're getting cool amounts of healing with Nosferatu or something. And it also has the self-damage so you can actually heal. But yeah, no, this is a passive that needs to change. It just as it is with the current version, it shouldn't exist. We could have like an overheal passive. Again, tying passives to healing is not exactly the most fun with the state of healing at the moment, where healing is just completely necessary. That being said, like, I would just like to say, healing is, I think, better than it's ever been. We have had a lot of issues with healing in Peglin in the past, where healing passives were excessively strong. And I believe after the popping corn and the cookie nerfs, it's definitely much less noticeable, because before those passives were very much just like, hit these if you want to win the game kind of thing. Safety net. I really like having safety net. It's much like wool chicken. You just get the immediate value and it's immediate, a constant, consistent value, and that's just like really nice. Um, is it providing you +1/+1 damage? No, it's not. Power Glove's also an amazing passive, and it's basically doing the same kind of effect as safety net, depending on what you've got. But sometimes you would definitely prefer the safety net, and there are some builds which can do some very, very funny things with safety net. Extremely funny things. One of the ones that I'm thinking of right now is a shuffle comp. So you're spamming crits and refreshes onto the board, right? Except you have Betsy's head. So what you do is you basically just end the shot so that you don't hit any of the like 50 crits on the board, because that way you have plus 100 damage, which means you're dealing like basically 500 damage immediately. Which, depending on what orb that's on, is like extremely, extremely nice. But there are just some cool things you can do with safety net, but most of the time it's just going to be a good, consistent extra source of damage, which is what you want from it. Pumpkin Pie. Yet again, it's another passive which is just like improving your shots, and improving your shots is very nice. I do love Pumpkin Pie, so I might be a bit tempted to rate it perhaps slightly fine. I think that it's a solid. I'm really happy to pick up Pumpkin Pie a lot of the time. I feel like I could put it low S. Oh, I don't know. A lot of the times it is just improving your shots by quite a bit, and you're very happy to have it. Most of the time, you probably can't play around it too much. Oh my god, but then you have those shots where you also have weighted chip, and you get a 2 times multiplier for your pumpkin pie slot, and then you go in it like twice or maybe even 3 times. And like, it's just perfect. It's a high variance passive, really. Um, Sometimes your shots just become absolutely insanely massive, and on average they're going to be better, but sometimes they're just going to be completely normal shots. Hero's Backpack. The new Hero's Backpack is awesome. It used to be in C tier. That was a very fair spot for it, I'd say. The new Hero's Backpack, however, I mean, I love being able to just pick up like 7 Rub-Orbs and then never hit a Hero's Backpack. That's just so fun. It enables such silly plays, and I do definitely appreciate it for that. I think that it's a solid, yeah, let's chuck it like around here, around Ring of Reuse. There are some orbs, like Bull Lightning, for example, where if you get a Hero's Backpack and let's say you have one Bull Lightning and then you spot another one, you can do some very crazy things. I've had Constricting Chains, Bull Lightning, with like 5, 10 Bull Lightnings, and that has been amazing. Like, being able to deal damage with Constricting Chains is incredible. And Hero's Backpack is one of the best ways in the game to do that because it gives you so much power immediately. And usually most of the insane scaling sources either come with a downside or they need you to um, scale up, wait a bit to get to their full power. Ask me anything. I am still just shocked at the rarity of this passive. I feel like it does not belong where it belongs. Realistically, what I believe is that too many enemies don't have resistances, and that this passive is just it's not worth it in too many fights. And the fights where it is worth it, you don't even really care that much. Like it's it's saying something. When I would rather have a grabby hand than a ask me anything. I feel like grabby hand just has so many more hits in this current like board state for Peglin, because like I said, there were a lot more enemies they made which have flying attributes. Whereas you look at the ones with resistances, and there's not really anything. Maybe the fourth area is going to have a whole bunch of resistances. That might be cool, but I'm not really seeing this passive. It just doesn't really exist there for me. Criticros. I think I was a bit generous with where I put it last time. I put it like medium, 60% A, really. I think that honestly, yeah, I think that's fair. Look, sometimes it can be a threshold. Sometimes having that extra AoE damage is really nice. Sometimes you can get insta kills with it, and it's just incredible. Most of the time, you're just going to pick up other things. Or even if you get the Criticus, you're not actually going to get good use out of it. Just most of the time, it's not really doing what you want. And yeah, it's like one of the most fun passives ever. But like, I feel like if a passive's insanely, insanely fun, that that probably means it's also not the best. I say that, but a lot of these passives are insanely, insanely fun. Although some of them might be specifically because they're just that good. Right, Juke Pot. So last time I put Juke Pot as S++, one of the strongest passives in the game. And this time I agree. Let's just chuck it right up there. It's an enabler. It enables Shuffle Orb, and Shuffle Orb is insane. Suddenly that one refresher course that you have is granting you a win condition. Suddenly that one Molly Flower is just giving you Giga Scaling. There are just so many ways you can break it. So many ways you can break it, I see. There's so many ways you can break having infinite refreshes and crits on the board. And at the baseline, you're generating extra crits. It's basically a special button, or depending on how many crits you have on the board, more than that. And with potential for, I have it as the worst passive in the game right now, for the tactical treat to be valuable, which is more than tactical treat usually is going to be. Read Philosopher's Stone. Greed is good, but you'll notice how Navigation Inflation and Molten Gold are just going to be way higher than Read Philosopher's Stone. Most of the time, we're going to struggle a lot to get use out of Read Philosopher's Stone. I think that Formula so low. Formula does not deserve to be that low. Didn't I put Formula in A tier? I guess, okay, I can't put Formula in A tier because there are the maps where it doesn't have bombs. Yeah, Read Philosopher's Stone. Most of the time, it's going to give you a very small amount of coins. But even just that small amount of extra coins is very nice to have. But even just having Read Philosopher's Stone there as a threat, it's like if I pick up a Peg Bag, if I pick up a Refreshive, or maybe even a this one, Heavy Shaft Potion, I think? I'm not sure. Not sure between the names of the Heavy Shaft and the Light Shaft potions. Then suddenly you're actually generating a lot of cash. And as I've said before with the other greed passes, more cash means more options, which means your late game is going to be better. And that's just really, really valuable because, especially with Crucible 20, you need to have a good late game. A lot of the fights later on get very, very challenging. And when I say challenging, I mean they're going to drain a very consistent amount of health from you. And you need to make sure that they're not doing that in a row a whole bunch. Because otherwise you will just lose before you even get to the boss. Penguin. Just some good extra damage, really. I think it's just like a solid A. Yeah, let's like chuck it near Adventure and Betsy's Hedge. That's a good spot for it, I'd say. You're going to get a good amount of extra damage from it. It's not going to be bad by any means. You appreciate the extra hits. The hits run out. They're only for your first few shots, which may matter even less than your later shots. But I mean, it's something. It's there. It's definitely not a bad passive. It's what I would call like it's a pretty generic passive, yes. But like, look at these passives, which are like way more generic and like much less interesting. This one, there are very interesting ways you can manipulate it. Um, these ones, usually they're a bit on the harder side to manipulate, and you're going to have to work a bit harder for some of them. Grinding Monstera. You know what? Maybe it's a bit crazy, but let's be honest. I think we can just afford to slap that right up here. Grinding Monstera is a very funny passive, because in Area 3 it's pretty bad. It's basically an apple a day, except if you look right here, apple a day is actually a pretty solid passive, so Grinding Monstera is not bad then. And then when you get in Area 1, it is quite possibly the best passive in the game. The extra max health it provides you is just insanely, insanely valuable, and sure, it might not be specifically helping you for Area 1 that much. It's probably only an apple a day by the end of Area 1, or maybe more. But it echoes on for the rest of your run, and like your percentile heal effects are more effective, which means you can press the button and you don't need to press it more, which gives you more options. And it just scales on massively. Early Grinding Monstera Area 1 is just incredible. Grinding Monstera Area 2 is still insanely, insanely solid, and overall I just really like this passive. It is a shame though, there are so many like elite fights where it's just like one enemy, and then you have the fights like Slime Drop, which is still unfortunately only counted as one enemy, despite the fact that you have to wade through maybe 9-ish? I'd say 6 to 9 enemies, but still only giving you one max health there. But even then, that's still just fine. You're getting a rare passive, you're getting gold, like you are achieving a win condition. Sash of Focus. Now, it could be funny and put Sash of Focus as like one of the worst passives in the game because technically it only has one effect. But the effect that it has, as it turns out, of giving you Taunt Sash is just insanely, insanely good. So I won't be ranking Taunt Sash if it is here, but it's not good. I did not want it to be here and I can't see it, so it's not there. Yes, Taunt Sash. Now, a lot of the times when I picked up Taunt Sash recently, I haven't actually gotten to use it, which means it's a really bad passive. A really, really bad passive. So here's the thing. Taunt Sash is actually not the best passive if you are in a situation where you cannot actually heal up upon collecting your Taunt Sash. And that is very possible, and sometimes you will just die, even after getting your Taunt Sash, and that sucks. However, there are the times, let's say you're playing Crucible 20. This quite literally happened recently to me. You get your Taunt Sash in Area 1, and then you have a mildly close boss fight. They pop your Savior, and then you have maybe it's only a World on Stake, which is what it was for me, I believe. And suddenly you can just earn that health back. the boss actually isn't threatening you too much, um, you earn back that health, and then you heal up to half your health. So you're sitting there, you're on like, let's call it 60 HP, right? We'll be generous. You're sitting there on 60 HP, and now you have a Taunt Sash, and you're heading into Area 2. You effectively have 120 health. It's more like 150 health, really. And then if you've got healing, it's more like full health. And suddenly, like, the enemies are going to have to try really hard to actually kill you from that point on. Taunt Sash just enables some completely lost runs. It does absolutely incredible things, and even if it's doing nothing, which sure a lot of the time it's probably not going to do much because you have to die to activate it, and dying can be kind of hard depending on how strong you are. Um, yeah, but even if you're not activating it, you're still happy to just have it there. It's literally just a safety net, and as it turns out, that's pretty good for it. Alright, Primer of Frost. Here's the funny thing. I believe that for my last tier list, Primer of Frost was just nerfed. And it was still an S++, because, that's a very fair placement for it, I'd say. However, I think I'm going to put S++, I'm going to kick it down from S++. I think that it deserves S. PS on basically every other shot. You can just call it every other shot. Yes, that's not technically what it is, but most of the time that's basically what it's going to be. Is inherently very valuable. Any kind of access you can have to more than one enemy is so good, especially for so many orbs. However, there's just a lot of shots where like they're off shots, or you're not going to need AoE and that kind of thing, or maybe it's a bad shot just overall, right? And yeah, the Prime Rod isn't actually going to be doing that much for you. So am I very happy to see a Prime Rod? Yes. It's nowhere near the instant take that it used to be previously. It used to be so insane. Oh god, Overwhelmer feels so much better because of the nerf to Prime Rod of Frost, that's for sure. That being said though, Overwhelmer still feels just pretty hard to take. Dungeon Die. So this one actually did get changed since I last used it. And okay, a bit rude, if a bit fair, I put it mid B, basically leading the second row of B. I think that new dungeon die is really quite solid. I think that I'll put it near special button. I think that -2 +4 is actually really, really nice. I do think that the -3 +3 was pretty playable. In particular, it was just another passive which made ambidextrity really, really good, which wasn't that bad. But now it's even better, and ambidextrity is still just as good as it was with it. And you can get some really, really good shots off of Dungeon Die. Um, like, sure, there are some shots it's going to completely crunch, and sometimes that's your key orb, and that's really unfortunate. But sometimes your Pebble will just randomly have 9 crit damage, and you can just proceed to hit like 20 pegs, including a crit, and it just proceeds to melt something, right? And that's just actually a pretty big deal. Like, getting a Dungeon Die early on, I'm not really that disappointed whatsoever. It's really nice to have. Branch of Ember. Look, the passive is obviously not a standalone passive. You need other stuff to combo with it, and yeah, I agree with the statement. I'd say it's around like I have Turtle Area. Oh no, let's bump it up more. Let's bump it up more. Apple a day, yeah, that sounds about fair. Wait, here's backpack. Yeah, no, I'd say that's about on the same level kind of thing. Look, if you find blind stuff, then great. You've got a great combo. It's going to cheese some fights, and that's going to be really, really nice. Or, at the minimum, right? When you apply Bramble, you're applying 8 blind, which actually is not bad. Before that number used to be just a token amount. It was really, really bad. But 8 blind actually matters now. Especially if you've got Ram's Eloquence or the new cool passive, which is, here, effective criticism. Yeah, but most of the time, the value that you're going to be getting from it is just you have Sand Arrows or you have Smoke Mod, and you just get sometimes an AoE blind or sometimes just single target Bramble, sorry. AoE Bramble or sometimes just single target Bramble. And just being able to delay the fight by a few more turns is pretty valuable. Like, would I rather have like a hero's backpack kind of thing? Yeah, probably Pumpkin Pie. Yeah, I'd probably rather have that kind of thing. Like, if I already have a blind thing, especially, and I get offered one, like, that's just free value. Especially if I'm trying to do debuff nonsense like Spin Infection, where you're trying to wait as long as you can to get as much value out of your debuffs as possible before they're actually like dealing real amounts of damage to you. Knuckles. So I think last time I played, last time I did the tier list, sorry, I put Knuckles up here, which it's very strong. I think that's reasonably fair. I think that in hindsight, I'll put it more like here. Knuckles is one of the best sources of scaling in the game. It's really, really good, and it incentivizes you to be improving your reloads, which is a really good thing to be doing. However, it's a bit harder to use than you would like. A lot of the time I found on Crucible like 16 and above, Um, you're not getting the most value out of it. Look, I'm trying to not place it too high in S++. Now that I've said that, yeah, no, this passive is just insane. It is, as I said, one of the best scaling passives in the game, and the circle it provides can be so mandatory for your game plan. If you're playing Blan, if you're playing Peglin, it's decent. If you're playing, I'm not sure if it's really available in the other classes. I think it's available in Spinventer. Spinventer, you're not going to complain. It's just a really, really nice passive to hit, and it's just so worth it. Most of the time, you're going to be pretty damn happy when you're picking up a Knuckles. It's really quite decent. All right, essential oil. So essential oil has the problem of you can find it on Peglin, and most of the time on Peglin, you're not going to get any use out of it, unfortunately. That being said, though, I think that the times where you hit on Belen, which is where I should be counting it, because it's not really a Peglin passive, counting it as a Peglin passive is a bit unfair. But I will still be treating it as if it does have some level of play into Peglin, even though you realistically never really pick this up on Peglin. Yeah, no, it's just a decent passive to have. You're happy to find one. It's probably like a Wyman here. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty fair. Um, look, two extra bulwark each time is not bad, especially if you're combining it with some other effects. It can really get quite nice. Like maybe you have a either training tablet or added advantage, maybe a mask of joy. There are just like a lot of things which can make it very worthwhile. And baseline, you're getting what +1, +2 starting shield. That's You're not going to complain. Like, sure, it's not the most, but it's basically a basic blade, right? +1 starting with circle, that kind of thing. So most of the time, it's just going to be doing like some pretty decent stuff for you. Uh, Open Hammer and Destroyed. Sure, Fiery Furnace. That's what it's called. Open Hammer. I think you know what? I'll rate it a bit higher than I think. I think the Bullpen Hammer is actually just a really, really solid pickup a lot of the time. As it turns out, a lot of enemies in Area 2 have shields, and if you can pick up Whooping Hammer either in or during Area 2, you can get some fights you can just become completely unkillable. And that's actually like really, really valuable to have access to. Sure, a lot of fights it's not going to matter, and once you get past Area 2, obviously it's like barely going to matter unless you're doing literally shield comp. But like, it still can be nice to have. It gives you the option to do a shield comp when you otherwise wouldn't have access to it because, shield comp is definitely a thing where I would recommend that you hit the passives before you like commit to a shield comp because, yeah, it's definitely not something you want to be missing on. If you're picking up fortifications and you don't have the combo, then it is very unfortunate. But just because the passive is such good tempo into area 2, like it's just really nice there. And then we compare it to Fiery Furnace, and I think I'll chuck Fiery Furnace a solid like down here. Unfortunately, Fiery Furnace is just so much worse than Bullpen Hammer. And like you have to destroy the peg, as well as you don't get like the immediate shielding when you enter some area 2 fights. And as it turns out, the difference between the shielding being immediate and being over the course of the fight is actually a really big deal. Like you immediately know how much shielding you have to work with. You're not going to be losing health. Because like here's the thing with Bullpen Hammer. Let's say you gain 30 shielding and then you take like 40 damage over the course of the fight. Cool. You only took 10 health loss. But if you do the same for this thing, where you gain 30 shielding and you lose 40 health, you're probably losing more like 20 health because you're going to have like 10 shielding remaining over. Just because that's probably how the damage is going to be split up, kind of thing. And yeah, it's just a lot worse than its cousin, unfortunately. Alright, we have Mask of Sorrow. Mask of Sorrow, in the latest patch, with like the glass half full, the roundabout, and all the debuff nonsense, has felt so much better. So before I had it like medium A, I think, you know what? Honestly, yeah. No, I think this is very fair. I think that Roundrule, mostly the orbs, but also has quite a few more passives that enable it. Debuff stuff for Roundrule has gone so much better. Roundrule's like being buffed quite a lot through just those kinds of things. Do I think that it's the strongest thing you could be doing? Probably not. You need some pretty specific setup. But like if you just have like, let's say you have a sand arrows and you have a glass half pool. No, not a glass half pool. What's the passive called? Clear the way. Just picking up a Mask of Sorrow is actually just like really, really good. Like Mask of Sorrow, I feel like improved so much here. I was really impressed with how it was when I played it recently. And like, sure, that makes a lot of sense when you consider Pincer Maneuver and Status Symbol both being doubling effects for it. Like, yeah, that checks out. They're both doubling passives on a passive which is +1 onto what is potentially very small values, and that's just really, really nice. But overall, even without either of them, I feel like it's just been putting in good work. I've definitely felt like it's actually viable that I can actually run debuff stuff more, which is really nice because, I want to be able to just like stack up stupid amounts of infection or exploitable on enemies and have it actually matter. Well, blind too, but let's not get into blind now. Spin infection. Your bomb supply spin infection 1. So baseline, it's basically an improved catalyst, except it has potential for more high roll because if you're hitting 3 bombs in the one shot, that's not plus 10 damage per bomb. Well, it is plus 10 damage per bomb for this turn, but for next turn, it's not going to be. It's going to be have an echo effect. So, yes, it's better than plus 10 damage, but it's still on the smaller side. I'd say around here is very fair. Um, Definitely around Branch of Ember is, I think, very, very fair. The damage is nice. If I'm trying to do some infection stuff, it's extra nice. If I've got like your debuffs give you Illusion, that's also really, really nice. Like there are just a few things to where I'm really happy to have it. And even when I'm not that happy to have it, maybe it's providing me with a breakpoint, right? It's not bad to have. I'd say it's still better than Bombs Apply Blind 2. Yeah, I think that's very, very true. Mask of Joy. This is tough. I think that we'll put Mask of Joy slightly ahead of. Yeah, I think around here is like very fair. I feel like Training Weight better than Mask of Joy, yeah, sure. No. Yeah, it's slightly better than Mask of Sorrow. I feel like it's always been that case. But still just pretty decent. There are just a lot of effects that it's hitting. Baladin is so happy to get it. Peglin Tuition is still decently happy to get it for their scaling pieces. Roundle's really happy to get it, and Spinmander might not care the most, but they're still gonna happily pick one up. Like, might not be providing too much, but it's still pretty decent. Yeah, Roundle's really happy to get it. No, it's just a really solid passive. I've always liked Mask of Joy. It's just a good fun one. Guaranteed crits for, I believe it's on 11 for the current version. It was buffed down from 13 or something. Yeah, getting guaranteed crits is pretty valuable. It's definitely quite nice. Where did I put the other guaranteed crit one? Double Illusion equals guaranteed crit, because I don't actually see it yet. Oh, that's because it's a Peglin relic in this one. I see. Sorry, it's a Roundel relic and I don't have that stuff here. Well, that's fine. But yeah, counterfeit crits. Where exactly do I want to place it? Let's go around like here somewhere. The guaranteed crits are actually so nice. You know what? Maybe sneak it up here. Look, one of the issues that it has is that your coins will run out. That's going to be unfortunate. Your coins are going to run out, and then the passive's not really going to be doing that much. Like, you might only get 3 or 4 crits per map. But as it turns out, having your first big shot, which is hitting a whole bunch of pegs, basically be a guaranteed crit, is really, really nice. Especially depending on what class you're playing, it's really quite valuable, and I don't believe Baladin has access to it, so we won't be treating it as that. Yeah, no, I'm happy to pick it up a lot of the time. It might not be doing the most a lot of the time, but it's still just quite nice to have. Like, sure, you might already have 3 crits on the board, but you're still fine to just pick it up, At the minimum, it's more potential to do nonsense with crit stuff, like Fleece or God forbid Criticris. To be fair though, it definitely can get kind of interesting with Criticris and already a whole bunch of crits on the board. Maybe also counterfeit crits. Alright, Bag of Orange Pegs. Bag of Orange Pegs is a pretty amazing passive. I'm very happy to pick up Bag of Orange Pegs and have it do absolutely nothing. Bag of Orange Pegs just sits there and it threatens the enemies. It's just look, if we don't hit a refresh, you're kind of screwed. And as it turns out, having a passive which just works flawlessly with Refreshive is really nice, because then you can just sit there and you can be like, I don't want any refreshes on my board. Which is not ideal, but if you're doing that, then you probably have Morbid, so you can probably still get kills pretty easily. And then you're sitting there with maybe a 2x multiplier, maybe even more than a 2x, maybe even up to 4x. And it's just providing you with a lot of extra damage. I think I'd happily put it there. I think it's definitely stronger than guaranteed crit. I'm really happy to get this. Look, it's very simple, right? Multipliers are extremely good. If you can stack multipliers upon multipliers, that is even better. Dupe Station. I've always had a bit of an interesting relationship with the Dupe Station, to be honest. Look, you only get the benefit once every 4 shots. And as it turns out, only getting it once every 4 shots is quite unfortunate because there's three of your shots where it's just much less impactful. Except the thing that you're getting, multi ball, is really, really good. And just because that multi ball on its by itself is just so incredibly good, I think I'll put it like high A. I think the dupe station does deserve to be higher if I paid more attention to dupe station. Like if I was looking at my deck and being like, I need to shoot this orb and this orb, so that this orb, the AoE, or maybe it's like healing or something, can be the dupe station shot. Because let's say you have maybe a Manchester shot, maybe a go for gold. Suddenly this dupe station shot is now 4 shots, and depending on what orb that is, that can cause that can just end the fight right there. It can do some very fun things. Let's say Prime Slime got nerfed, and it was a very fair nerf. And last time I put it like low S. I think that like low S is still a very good spot for it. I'll put it lower than last time, around like navigation inflation. But a lot of the time, okay, no, it's definitely yeah, that sounds fair. I'm just so happy to pick up Prime Slime. At the minimum, the slimy is appreciated. Extra durability on Pex, not bad. The potential for healing slimes is incredible. It's what makes the passive so good, right? Like the fact that you can heal from it is just really, really nice. And then it also has the synergy with like a good slime and stuff, which is actually just like decent scaling. I was very mean to a good slime last time. I think that my current rating for a good slime is perhaps, honestly, I'm gonna boost that more. Up you hop. I think that I was actually really impressed with the good slime recently. It's been doing much more than I expected. Aliens Rock. I love Aliens Rock. You pick it up early on, and you can just go, alright, I'll just play an Aliens Rock run. You pick up a whole bunch of good targeting orbs. Maybe you're playing Spinmenta, right? And you have your Bull Lightning, you have like Concentrication, you have. The list goes on. There are quite a few good targeting orbs that you can pick up. And it's especially amazing on round early on, right? Yeah, that stuff is super fun. Unfortunately, most of the time when you're getting Aliens Rock, it's probably not going to be doing that. So I think I'm going to be putting it much higher than I did last time. I think I'll put it around mid A. But unfortunately, most of the time you're picking up Aliens Rock, you're probably not getting the most use out of it. And, that's a shame because getting use out of it is like so fun. Especially since they changed how balance worked with it. I haven't actually really gotten to do that much. I've done it a few times and it is really fun to do. Reactant. So they actually fixed this, which is really, really nice to see. Reactant definitely deserves the change. It now gives you the immediate illusion. However, I think it should still be 15. I think that if I was feeling on the meaner side, I would just slap it straight in before remove. Say that I want it to be 15 and be done with it. But I don't want to do that. I would rather just yeah, I'd say high B, sure. I think that look, if I get one, if I'm not given one for free, I'm happy. I'm fine with it. It's fine. It's basically acting as probably a worse puppet, and that's not too bad. Uh, I think that it should be 15 though. Look, I'm putting it here so that next time I have absolutely no excuses for not putting in buffer remove because I think I really do want to put in buffer remove. 3 exploitable, but I'm just really happy it changed it. Right, like it's definitely a very nice change for it, even though it could be considered as a bug fix. I'm not sure where they had it in their patch notes. Here's the funny thing. 3 exploitable, like you wouldn't really expect it to be doing that much. It's like an instance 3 exploitable, but as it turns out, even just the threat of, oh hey look, if I hit a crit, you're taking 30% more damage than normal, is actually a really big deal. As I said, multipliers are really good, and it's not exactly a multiplier. Not really. I feel like multipliers kind of need to be higher than 2 times to count as a multiplier, and it's not exactly. But it's a very good start, and if you combine it with the multiplier, it just gets like so much stronger as well. Like, also there are so many orbs like Dagorb where it really appreciates having just a multiplier on its 13 natural crit damage. Like that's really, really good. And yeah, just having it is nice. Even if no. It's just nice to have. I definitely think that I probably can't put it too much higher, but it's definitely a solid passive. Like you pick this up on Peglin or Roundroom, you're quite happy. On Spinmenta, I'm not sure if you can get on Spinmenta, but if you can get on Spinmenta, you're also very happy. Vitamin C, I love this passive. It's actually so fun. It's so much like tankiness, really. I think that I'll put it up here. I'm like really happy to get vitamin C's. There are some fights where it's just absolutely amazing to have. Like you bring it into a crossbow fight, and you can basically guarantee that you're going to get a dodge on either by the second or the third crossbow hit, kind of thing. And that's just valuable. It's nice to have. And then it's also the threat of Oh, look, if I assemble a full crit comp, you can't kill me. And a passive that says that is actually just like really, really decent. Flower. I mean, look, I rated Knuckles this high. Flower definitely deserves to be this high. I'm so happy to get it on like any class. Yeah, yeah. Let's check it up there. I think that recently I've really, really appreciated having Flower. It's one of the best scaling sources in the game. It's just so, so nice. And the fact that like if you hit crits, you gain a benefit, and the benefit you get is consistent with you hitting crits, and that's just so fun as it turns out. Because then you just want to build a game plan that's like fully built towards hitting crits, because like that way you're scaling your damage, and then you can also add in passives like perhaps a vitamin C, which is going to be amazing. Honestly, I really could rate vitamin C higher if I wanted, but I think it's fine where it is. Most of the time, you're probably not abusing vitamin C, and when you're abusing vitamin C, it gets really amazing, but most of the time, you're probably not. Slimy Salve. I think that Slimy Salve, straight up, is like the best healing passive in the game. Would I rather get a Recombobulate or a Slimy Salve? Now, that is a disgusting question to ask. They are both insane, insane passives that drastically warp how your run is going. But the answer is Slimy Salve. So, yeah, I think that Slimy Salve is just really, really good right now. 35. As it turns out, 35 is not enough. It needs to be like 45 or something. Maybe even 50. um, Look, if you want to consider it next to Popping Column is 1 every 15, which means that you're getting effectively 3 heals per 45, right? Slimy Salve is effectively, I think it's fair to call it like 3 heals every 35, really. Because that's what you very easily can get out of it. Like, let's say you're shooting like a Ball Lightning or a Machuska, you can probably get that use out of it, and like that's just really, really decent, especially since the healing also it echoes, right? Like you're going to get that healing slime back. It's going to be healing you more. It's just like such a good passive to have. I think that 35 could definitely be 45, which could potentially be 50. It's really quite good. And while I do think that banishing it to like 50 is probably not the best idea, because then that basically just means like you need multiple if you're going to be using it well, which is then like buffing multiple strategies. And I've talked about that a lot. It's not the most ideal thing to be doing, but it is a very understandable thing to like be forced into doing. But yeah, no, I'm just really happy to pick up Slimy Salves. Clear the way. Here's the thing. The old clear the way, where did I put it? Where did I put it? I put it, wow, generous. Very generous. I put like high B. I really liked Clear the Way. I think that it was more deserving of like low B. Not the best. Useful, but unfortunately, like the biggest spot where you want it to work, area 2 against shield guys, it doesn't work, which very unfortunate. You Clear the Way though. I'm slapping this all the way up, like here. Oh, I did something. There we go. That's much better. Yeah, no, like pumpkin pie clear the way. I'd probably rather have it clear the way. Okay, that's not bad. I'd probably rather have a pumpkin pie, but I think I should still keep this ready. Yeah, let's just switch that around, and yeah, let's switch that around again. And dupe station clear the way. Oh, you know what? Okay, no, the Bobula being an A tier, that just feels so wrong. I don't care if it's like not even useful in so many fights. The fights which it's useful in is just like, so worth it. It's such a good passive. Anyway, back to clear the way. 3 transparency per hit is a very big deal. Because the big thing about clear the way before is if you hit one enemy, cool. The next time you shoot, you're hitting plus 1 enemy. And that keeps going on until there are only 4 enemies on the board and you're just adding on more transparency. And then, because it's now 3 transparency, the second you get up to 10, well, 12 really, unless you have glass apple or any kind of extra debuff nonsense. But the second you get above 10 transparency, the people behind that thing, they're just about to get melted. Absolutely melted. And that's just a really, really nice effect to have attached onto a passive, which is meant to be like AoE pierce kind of things. Your attacks apply 1 or 2 explodable on a crit. Okay, where'd I put this last time? I need to know, because I'm feeling kind of crazy. I can't see where I put it last time. I imagine I put it like somewhere in A, but I really can't find it. Huh. I think that your attack supply 1 or 2 exploitable is lowest, maybe even high, medium high. Yeah, no, I think we'll stick with it for lowest right now. Much like with Criticrus, suddenly you have a passive which is asking you to hit crits to gain more benefits, and the benefits that it's providing is really, really nice. It's percentage damage scaling for your crits, and as I said, when Dagger is sitting there with a 13 base crit damage and it's hitting, let's say, 100 pegs, 1300 damage. Being able to just provide, let's say, a 40% damage multiplier because you've hit 2 crits previously is a massive, massive deal. Before I had it around like A tier. I think that I've definitely come to appreciate scaling a whole lot more for some of the classes which perhaps don't get the best access to that kind of stuff. Because it makes a massive deal. You need to be hitting your crits on like round rule, and if you're hitting your crits, you want to be gaining benefits like Spiffy crit, like Molly Flower, where you're just able, or like Vitamin C, where you're just like able to live now or able to just kill enemies. Because those are the two things you need to be doing. Because enemies are trying to kill you, so you either need to live or kill enemies. Preferably, the enemies are dead and thus not killing you, but that's not always the case, right? Spinception. Here's the funny thing. In Area 1, Spinception is like one of my favorite passives ever. I really love hitting Spinception for Area 1. Past Area 1, it's pretty garbage. Past like using a Cauldron Bubble to wipe out Area 2 enemies, which is then taking like another 1 or 2, or maybe even 3 turns. It's definitely not something you should be relying on too much. It is definitely nice to have. But for getting you out of Area 1, Spinception is one of the best passives in the game for that. Do you know what happens when you have a Grubby Gloves and you pick up a Spinception? This is in Crucible 20. And then you look at your Area 1 boss and it's Slime. You just win. You lose less than 20 health for the boss fight. So that means that you don't need to greed, you don't need to add orbs that are win conditions to your deck. Like, you don't need to get like the Spiffy crit instead to try and scale up damage against him. No, you just win. Spinception is a really, really nice passive to have, and like, sure, that's Slime specifically, and he literally has a clause for Spinception being strong against him. But consider it against the other two bosses as well. It's actually pretty strong against both of them too. They both like to take their time quite a bit. Instead, they make your shots a whole lot worse by just having like bad maps or that kind of thing. Spawning minions in front of them, right? Like that kind of thing. Distracting your attention. No, I really like having Spinception just to close out Area 1 elite fights. Sorry, boss fights. Elite fights, it's amazing for tree. You just melt slime tree with that. And it's not bad in some other fights, but you probably are there. I mean, yeah, it's definitely not bad for plants. That's also nice. Basically, it's a passive which actually hits in a lot of spots to where you're actually quite happy to get it a lot of the time, is what I've found. It's also just a cool mechanical passive. I love passives like this. This is probably my favorite kind of passive in any game. It's a passive which looks at a baseline rule and it says, alright, but what if we broke that rule? That's basically my favorite passive to have. Just because Inception's meant to go down, but this passive makes it go up. And that's just incredible. Counterfeit crits. Yeah, it's a solid amount of extra crits on the board. If I'm looking at passives, would I rather have a special button or a counterfeit crits? The answer is, I'd rather have a special button. Now, of course, counterfeit crits becomes absolutely incredible once you get the special button, and for that reason, I'll be rating it higher. But, like, I think you can understand what I'm saying. Right, like counterfeit crits is very nice to have. Most of the time, though, you're probably not going to be getting the most use out of it. But if you can be, it's a very nice passive. Honestly, no, I'm gonna kick you straight back. Now, here's my reasoning. Something I didn't understand about counterfeit crits for a while is it's whenever a crit is hit, not when one is activated. And activating other pegs in this game is a really, really strong thing to do. So you really want to be doing those things, which means that this is just a passive that won't have good synergy with those kinds of effects, like this, like lightning orb, and like others which I can't think of at the moment. Which is not the nicest. It's not too bad, but it's not the nicest. Crystal Catalyst. Unlike Inception, it actually scales pretty well into the late games. Crystal Catalyst is kind of how you kill enemies if you don't have all the doubling effects. That being said, it's nowhere near as strong in the late game, the early game. Sorry. And so I'm just going to place it around here. The damage it provides is nice for the comps that it provides it in, but most of the time you're not going to care about it. I'd much rather have like a good slime, so I'm going to keep pushing it down. I think that's a pretty fair spot for it. In the comps where it hits, and it's more like low S for them because they just need that kind of expedition for their expedition. They need their game plan expedited. And Critical Catalyst is one of the very few passives that would provide it, that isn't just directly doubling it. So yeah, I think that's a pretty fair spot for it. Effective criticism. Now here's the thing. If you're playing Peglin, you're playing round. You probably want to be critting anyway. So now you're getting a slight benefit for your crits. Like, yeah, it's a cool passive. I think that it deserves like solidly this kind of spot. I think that I'm very happy to pick it up. Okay, very happy to pick up. That's a lie. I absolutely adore this passive. This passive is so fun. I do think that most of the time, though, it is probably not the most ideal. A lot of the time, you're probably not going to get the best use out of it. But if you're doing like debuff stuff or crit stuff, or both, which is pretty common for Randall, or maybe even a mix of the three of debuff stuff, crit stuff, and illusion stuff. That's the most common one, to be honest. Then, like, yeah, you can get decent use out of it. I do think that effective criticism and round eloquence should both be buffed, though. I think that the buff that I want for them is you should not be able to apply debuffs to a like you should not attempt to apply blind to characters who are immune to blind. If a character is immune to a debuff, you shouldn't be able to apply that debuff, attempt to apply that debuff to them. Otherwise, it's just like completely wasting the proccants. Like, so this character has a benefit, which is making them immune to Bramble, right? That's already a good effect. In addition, we're giving them another good effect because we just are trying to do something and suddenly we can't. Like, I don't know. I don't like the idea of them having two positive effects there. I think that it should be one on one. This passive, this is interesting. This was not even on the last one, yeah. I think I'm gonna put like yeah, around Crystal Catalyst. It's obviously much better than Crystal Catalyst. I'll put you around here. Double bombs is not bad. You're not going to complain too much. It can be very, very useful. However, a lot of the time, you can't get any use out of it whatsoever. And the times where you do want to get use out of it, you don't really care. You're fine with just having a battle collector or your bob lying around. And okay, I see. That's not true. A lot of the time, if you have like a powder collector or a bob lying around, you're very happy to have this passive. It's giving you a lot of value. But sometimes, you also just like don't care about having it lying around. So yeah, it's not that bad of a passive, but most of the time you're not going to get use out of it, and sometimes you won't want to get use out of it. And the times where it is handy, though, it is pretty handy. It's quite nice to have. Much like Crystal Catalyst in that regard. Pincer Maneuver. This is tough. This is the first time I've ever rated Pincer Maneuver. There are a few things that make Pincer Maneuver good. There are a few things that make it bad. It's pretty bad to reflect. That is definitely a problem that it has. It's pretty good into Area 3. It's pretty good with debuff stuff. And it's generally pretty useful. It does half your damage for the enemy who's probably hitting you in Area 3, though. The question is just like, how crazy do I want to go, right? How crazy? The answer is extremely crazy. I'm feeling exceptionally crazy. I think Pincer Maneuver is one of the best passives ever. I think that Roundel is so incredibly happy to get Pincer Maneuver. I think that Balin, pretty happy to get Pincer Maneuver. Spin Meta, also very happy to get Pincer Maneuver. Peglin Tuition. Nope, also very happy to get Peglin. Yeah, everyone just wants Pincer Maneuver, right? And like, even when it has a bad matchup into some of the fights in Area 3 because they're just one enemy smacking you, and you're having a damage against the front enemy and hitting the back enemy who's like not even going to get to you because you're going to like obliterate them before they would have gone to you. Or like taking some damage from Reflect when you otherwise wouldn't have taken damage. I think it's still just worth it. This passive is just so nice to have. It's literally a doubling effect for debuff passive. It's really quite nice. Are we on to boss passives now? It looks like we're on to boss passives. I'm going to quickly skip over the boss passives and just rate some of these. Cake. So let's. I'm not going to zoom out again. Cake is one of the best passives to get in the game. There's a reason why I keep trying to set up for getting Cake because it's just like super super worth it. Plus 50 max health is really really nice, and most of the time you shouldn't need to shoot egg. It's really really nice to have. Inferno Winger. Having a max HP sucks. It really does. But you get the best healing passive in the game for it. I say best. I'm going to say second best. It's not the best healing passive in the game. Slimy Salvos. Because you can't consider it as a standalone effect. Sure, if you have a grinding monster with it, it's going to be amazing. But you have to consider the fact that you're having a max HP for it. And unfortunately, that just makes it a lot less desirable. Gambling Chip. I think that B is just a very solid spot for it. Gambling Chip is very decent. However, most of the time you can't really pick it up. A lot of the time your shots are not going to be working out the way you want it to, and sometimes your shots do massive damage and it feels great, but most of the time it's probably not going to be working out. IOU, I'm not going to count that. I'm going to leave you there. IOU does not count. Okay, fine. I'll put IOU in buff or remove because I want the devs to buff how much I can actually pay out. I've only ever paid out once. I've tried it I don't know how many times. Apparently it's actually not that rare or an event, and somehow I just keep missing it. So I'm putting in C tier because it's the worst passive in the game. I hate it. I never want to pick it up. I never get value from it. It's so bad. Anyway, Anvil, yeah. They nerfed it to 6 damage. 6 damage. Who cares? It's saving you so much power in the early game. It's just really really nice. I'm just so happy to pick up Anvil in Area 1 so much of the time. And you even have the funny moments where you have like 10 orbs in your deck. Wait, 10 orbs, that's not enough. Let's say 16 orbs, that's probably enough. 16 orbs in your deck, and you get the option to duplicate your entire deck. And let's say they're all level 2 or level 1 pebbles. Like, that's so fun. That's a button that can kill you. Mallet. I think the mallet is much better. So I think I'm going to put it there. Around there. Yep. Very fair. I think that mallet is pretty usable now. Taking no damages is definitely something, but a lot of the time you want your deck upgraded anyway, and you don't want to be discarding your good orbs, so you're not actually going to be getting value out of mallet. So like, yeah, not the worst, but most of the time you can't really use mallet, unfortunately. And to finish things up, boss passives. I plan on rating the boss passives mostly by comparing them to other boss passives. So yeah, let's just jump straight in. +0, +5. No, you start off with 5's finesse now, it's actually what it is. And 1 less refresh. I think this passive is very hard to take. I think that, yeah, you can just kind of take B tier. I think that, look, the second you have 1 or maybe even 2 more refreshes on the board, or maybe just an extra refreshing source, this passive is a lot easier to take, especially if you have like guaranteed crits. It can be really hard. It also has like good synergy with like Leaf. You know, it's just another thing which has great synergy with Leaf. But a lot of the time, you just can't afford to pick up this passive. You can't afford to crunch your refreshes by -1, even if it does provide you with a damage boost, because you know the chances are you probably can't guarantee to hit the crit anyway all the time. So you're losing the benefit for losing the refresh, which means that you're getting like 0 value if you're not hitting a crit, and that can just be very unfortunate. It's a very tough to pick first boss passive, but as the second one it can be quite decent, and obviously it's pretty good with setup still. Confusion Mask. I don't like Confusion Mask. I think that I should consider taking Confusion Mask more when my first boss passive is Constricting Chains, and I think that's pretty much it. I think that Confusion Mask should be the older version. +2, +4, you start each combat with Confusion 4. I think that the bit about needing free debuff is a bit nonsense right now. Very hard to proc, the damage boost is just not worth it. I would rather skip my boss passive and just use my rub orbs, which are like 4/8s or 5/10s if I'm Sphincter, or maybe I have a Power Glove. They're like 5/9s. Like that's really solid damage. Sure, if I have like a Machuska, maybe taking the Confusion Mask isn't that bad, but I actually need to be shooting the Machuska for that. And the Machuska doesn't have Pierce, so like it's just a cascading of things which is just like, yeah, you really shouldn't be picking this up. Gifts that keep giving. I'm gonna chuck this all the way in S. My last run, I was shocked at just how good Gifts that keep giving was with Jupiter Orbs. I find that this passive, I do talk about how it has some pretty large downsides, quite a bit, and I don't really talk enough about how just like good this passive is. It's like just a really solid passive. You're getting so many more hits per shot, and yes, you can't excavate towards your refreshes anymore. That is very unfortunate. It's definitely a passive which appreciates having the tactical treat, which is a bit funny. But like you actually just get so much more damage from this passive, and it has such great combos with some specific things. It's like so worth it. Like Sliming, oh my god, amazing. Peg upgrading, oh my god, amazing. And Leave the Rest for Later, it's also got great synergy with that. You know, yet another one with just good synergy for Leave the Rest for Later. There's a running theme between a lot of these passives, honestly. Glorious Suffering. I'm gonna be honest, this is one of the best passives in the game right now. It is amazing just how easily you can do damage with this passive. You'd think that -4, -4, and +4 upgrading would mean that your first shot can't deal damage. No, I've still dealt like 4,000 plus damage on my first shot. Like, guaranteed, sure, it is multi-pull stuff. But like, you can still do insane numbers with this thing. As well as, obviously, you know, when you look at the passive, you would hope that the late game scaling that it has is just good enough. And it's more than good enough. This is some of the best scaling you can get your hands on for sure. Yeah, just a really, really good passive. And it has great synergy with other boss passives and a lot of orbs that you want to be picking up anyway. Haglin's Satchel. They buffed it. I think that it's decent. I think, let's put it in the hero's backpack. I think that's pretty fair. I think that every time I see this passive, I do think about it, depending on what the other options there are. Because like sometimes it's just not worth thinking about, kind of thing, you know. I think that a lot of the time, though, I do end up thinking about it. Like, if there are good passives there, then I'll probably ignore it. But it's not bad. It can give you a win condition in and of itself. The upgrades can be nice. But generally, this passive is just like not really achieving what I want. I have also had times where taking this passive has literally just made my deck weaker. I've had orbs that I want to be shooting, and instead I'm shooting like a random level one nonsense. There's a lot of epic nonsense, and unfortunately, they're just not very good. Is it epic or rare? I don't know. Yeah, I think that I was just thinking about this. Like, it would be cool if there was like this might be an interesting boss relic that's like adding orbs to your deck doesn't cost any gold kind of thing. Because like adding orbs to your deck is not exactly a positive thing, and so it's definitely something you could attach onto a doesn't cost any gold kind of thing. And I feel like that is similar to the kind of thing this thing's trying to do, and it might not be like too bad of an idea to have in the game. Kinetic Meteorite. Now, Kinetic Meteorite, I think hmm, how cool. I think I'll put it like as the last passive in S. A lot of the time, Kinetic Meteorite is going to be really quite solid. You get more shots in, like more hits per shot, and that's just really good. That's kind of what you're looking for your boss passives. I'm going to be honest. You either want more hits per shot, or you want your shots to matter more. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Kinetic Meteor is actually pretty decent. If you only have one refresh on the board, picking up a Kinetic Meteor as your first boss passive can do wonders. It can be really quite good. Your second boss passive might be a Lethal Respirator, but that's still perfectly fine. Picking up your first boss passive specifically to get you through Area 2, it does actually work because your second boss passive, depending on what other combos it has combined with it, can just carry you to the end of the game, which is, you'll notice, the passives that I'm talking about, yeah, they're going to be an S++ because they quite literally can just carry you to the end of the game if you have like the right combos with them. I think there are a few here that you may be able to notice. Yeah, no, I think that the explosive force is very nice. It gets you a lot more hits, and even if you have good refreshing sources, you're still kind of fine to just pick it up. The downside is, well, I mean, it's got two, right? One is that if you have good refreshing, it's going to become practically useless, which is unfortunate. And the second one is misnavigation. If you pick it up, you're probably going to misnavigate at least once. That's unfortunate, but some passive it is worth just taking that loss for. And I'd say this is probably the passive that I'm the most happy to just. Okay, maybe not the most, but I'm decently happy to just take the misnavigation with this passive. Electromagnet, I think. Kinetic Meteorite is like here. I think Electromagnet is around here. Very similar passives with what they're achieving. Like the magnet doesn't turn itself off when hitting a refresh, so you can pick it up when you have good refreshing sources. And much like Kinetic Meteorite, it's also allowing you to hit the refresh easier. But I feel like I just kind of prefer what Kinetic Meteorite is doing for the shot rather than Electromagnet. Electromagnet's like it's usually not a bad pickup. You're usually pretty fine to pick it up. It can also cause you to misnavigate, but usually it's slightly less causing you to misnavigate than the other misnavigation passives. It's not bad. You are getting, on average, more hits per shot. I do think that it would be cool if having Electromagnet plus. Are they both called Electromagnet? Both the Orb and the boss Relic would make it so that it was an unnerfed Electromagnet. I think that'd be cool with the infinite magnetism. But, it's not too bad. If I get an Electromagnet, I'm not going to be too sad. There are some other options which I would literally just prefer to skip on. Like, okay, this is unfair. Let's just swap those two. Honestly, let's just keep you there. Electromagnet is significantly better than this, I would say. Matryoshka Shell. Well, so Matryoshka Shell historically has just always been an S++. It's never been a thought. You've always just slapped it in there and it's always been amazing. However, it got changed massively. And now Go for Gold is basically doing what it does. So we'll have to see if Go for Gold is still maintaining it. But not to worry, Matryoshka Shell is still just as strong as always. I'd say it is slightly weaker. I think Go for Gold is slightly stronger. It's a bit tough. I think old Matryoshka Shell is definitely stronger than current Matryoshka Shell. But I think that this current Matryoshka Shell is still amazing. Here's the thing. I keep telling myself, oh, this probably isn't the spot for Matryoshka Shell, and then it keeps being a really good spot for Matryoshka Shell. It's just consistently a very good passive, and I think that the only time you don't really want to consider Matryoshka Shell is when you already have other multiple sources that you don't want being halved. Like if you've got a constricting chains, you might not want a Matryoshka Shell. That being said, it's still pretty damn good. Like I talk about Matryoshka Shell not being ideal a whole bunch of the time, but most of the time it actually is just really, really, really good. Like this passive is still just really quite good. Multi-ball is good, eh? Sapasac. So I think that Sapasac is a good passive. I'll put it like up here. I think that it definitely doesn't deserve first. Sapasac is a really good passive at killing things. And for area 2 you need to kill things. It just so happens that in Area 2, it will be killing things. It's just a question of whether or not it's killing your opponents or you. Sapper Sack is like the passive that you pick up when you say, alright, I want to try and get to Area 3. Because suddenly you don't need any win condition for Area 2. It is your win condition for Area 2, and that's totally fine. However, you're going to need to live through that point, and Area 2 will try and steal as much of your health as possible, and so will Sapper Sack. And there are some fights which will doom you, and there are some passives you can't pick up with Sapper Sack. However, just picking up a Sapper Sack and having the tempo to just blast through anything is really, really valuable. It's extremely helpful, and when you can pick it up and not die, it's an amazing, incredible passive. It's one of the best in the game. Like, what it does is an incredible, incredible tool to have. It just comes with the unfortunate downside of murdering you. So you need to make sure that it's not murdering you. But the second it doesn't, it's like truly just incredible. One of the other reasons why I rate it so high is it's slightly easier now, but it's mildly easy to counteract the self damage that you're taking. Like Intentional Oboe, which is rated extremely highly, like the Ballad and Chess Piece, and just a whole bunch of things like that. Even just like something like Healing or Damage Reduction Slimes actually got a whole lot better as well. Basically, there are just a lot of good ways to decrease the bomb self damage to where it's pretty fine now. Sealed Conviction. This is interesting. I do want to know where Sealed Conviction placed previously, because I imagine that it wasn't actually pretty high, but also it seems like I can't find it. However, since then, we got a massive, massive change to Sealed Conviction. Before, it was at the start of combat, you would get your 3 +3/+3, and that'll be it. But now it's also per reload, and as it turns out, having the stats be per reload, as well as I really can't find this. Wow, okay. But having the stats be per reload is actually just a massive, massive deal. It means that I'd say on average, Seal Conviction is, you know what, I think I can chuck in it. Lowest. Here's the thing about Seal Conviction. It is a really, really, really good boss passive. One of the best boss passives when you have it with ambidextrony. And when you don't have it with ambidextrony, it's probably more like here. Having a boss passive that just gives you as much damage as ambidextrony, as Seal Conviction has, along with the like guarantee of you're going to get some more damage, and you can pretty easily activate it because you only have say 5-6 orbs in your deck, is quite valuable. There are a lot of orbs that really love having access to that kind of damage, and then you can also find ambidextrony, and it just goes really, really nuts when you actually get that. So like, yes, losing one discard is incredibly, incredibly unfortunate, but for the most part, I feel like this passive kind of just ends up working out a lot of the time, is what I find. Like, yes, it sucks to lose your discard, especially early on. Area 1, taking this as your first boss passive without an ambidextrony is terrifying. I think that it's a much worse first passive than it is a second passive. As a second boss passive, it's quite solid, especially since you probably know what you want at that point, and that's probably what you want if you're taking it, right? But yeah, no, I like it quite a bit. Wand of Skyfront Wrath, they made a huge change to Wand of Skyfront Wrath. Bombs now deal double damage as well, which I'd say is a pretty big deal. I don't actually know if the bombs, rigged bombs, also deal double damage to you. That is something that I should find out, because it's definitely a pretty big deal if they're also dealing double damage to you, because you kind of don't really want to be dealing with that. So with the change in mind, where do I want to put Wand of Skyfront Wrath? I think it's a solid B. Damage multipliers are really, really good. Wand of Skyfront Wrath deals a lot of damage to you, though. You really are going to need some way to mitigate the damage. Popping on is a great way to do it. Infernal Inget's also a great way to do it. Even having just something like Intentional Oboe can make it pretty takeable. There are a lot of situations where you find yourself thinking, oh wow, double damage is actually really good here. And you just need to be able to deal with the downsides of Wand of Skyfront Wrath. And the problem is, most of the ways you counteract the downsides of Wand of Skyfront Wrath are just good things you're doing in general anyway. So you don't actually need to pick up Wand of Skyfront Wrath to be able to win. You could probably skip and you'd be fine to win. Because picking up a passive like Wand of Skyfront Wrath or Sapper Sack gives you another loss condition. And when you've got a good solid win condition, maybe you don't want to be doing that, right? Alright. Last time I actually put Unpretentious Amulet in S++. And that was because I was very Ballad and Rained. And this time I was thinking of changing it. But honestly, the more I think about it, the more it's just staying there. Okay, so let's start off with talking about Ballad, because they're basically the only class that can actually get this passive, right? I don't believe Spinventer can, Peglin probably can. On Ballad, this even if I have a refreshing punch, I'm kind of praying for unpretentious amulet, not League's Escalator. Like that's just how ridiculously strong it is. Because if I have a refreshing punch, that means that like my refresher course or my Broske Knuckles or my abrasion, yep, my abrasion, all of them are going to be grinding me in a circle, and I want to be able to access my circle damage. And if I'm spam hitting all of the pegs on the board pretty easily, uh, then I'm going to want no crits on the board. And that's what Unpretentious Amulet provides, as well as just a flat +2 damage. Okay, actually, Spinmeter might, sorry, Randall might also have access to it. No, I can't recall. The problem is, I feel like I never see this passive, which makes sense because I think it's really, really insane. Although, to be clear, I should preface this. I think that if you're playing on Cruci 1 or Cruci 0, I think it's a much worse passive. I think that the biggest thing about this passive is the fact that you remove the last crit from the board. And obviously, Cruci 2 removes one crit from the board, so you're going to need to be playing on Cruci 2 or above to actually get the full use out of this passive, is what I would say. But yeah, no, just a +2 damage, which for Belen is also +4 stunning shield, mind you. And the guarantee that you're not going to hit any crits is really valuable. Constricting chains, it's been through many nerfs and buffs. I think that in the last place it wasn't. There was a time where it wasn't too strong. That's for sure. I think that the current version of it has a lot of downsides. The misnavigation's bad. The half damage is sometimes absolutely crushing. So I think I'm gonna have to put it in. Yeah, S plus plus. One of the best passives in the game. I'm so happy to get this basically every single time. The multi-ball it provides is so good. You can scale to offset um, the times 0.5 damage loss. Like it's really rough to lose that much damage, but you can easily scale it back up because you're hitting that many more pegs. Suddenly you're scaling like Refresher Course, which is part of the reason why I rated it so high, and part of the reason why I've rated all of the scaling pieces much higher than before. Honestly, a good slime. Get up. There you go, good slime. You can hop up all the way to A. Oh my god, that is a really massive climb for a good slime. And like refresh perspective. But yeah, no, I think that Unpretentious Amulet is. Sorry, I'm not talking about Unpretentious Amulet. Where are we going? Constricting Chains. I'm still just thinking about how good Unpretentious Amulet is and the fact that I never get it. Yeah, the opposite is Constricting Chains. I always get Constricting Chains, and it's doing a very, very good job consistently. So I'd say that a solid 10% of the time I take Constricting Chains, or maybe even 15%, I do just die. I like the damage to kill a demon. I demon hand or demon wall, take your pick, and then I just don't get screwed. That's that's not uncommon. A lot of the time you'll just get to area 2, and then in the fourth or fifth fight you're just gonna fight a demon hand, and you're gonna get absolutely smacked because you just don't have a proper win condition to deal with that nonsense at that point in time. Like he might even be on like 150 health by the end of the fight. It's a very very tough fight to get that early. But yeah, no, Constricting Chains is still just so worth it. As it turns out, the multi-ball is just really, really quite good. That being said, I really do hate the misnavigation that it provides. You completely lose access to your bombs. It's just like really unfortunate. Your targeting can be seriously, seriously unfortunate as well. It can cause you to lose so much health. But here's the thing: with all of those downsides, it's still strong enough to the point where it's staying in S++. It's a really, really good passive to have. Alright, moving on. Molten Mantle. It feels really rude. I think I'm just gonna, real quick, chuck Tender Cactus ahead of Molten Mantle because I I can't rate Molten Mantle without talking about Tender Cactus. Oh, poor Molten Mantle, eh? Alright, Tender Cactus. Where do I think this passive sits? Well, you see, before the nerf, it was one of the best passives in the game. It lost 0.5 damage, 0.5 damage multiplier. It's like, sorry, 0.05 multiplier, I believe. Maybe it was a 0.1. Something very small, but noticeable. And it's still just insanely strong. So Sapizak was really good because it's like basically the only boss passive that's like directly improving your AoE power. Tender Cactus and Molten Mantle technically as well, sure. Tender Cactus is also doing the same thing. It's converting all of your damage into targeting damage. And as it turns out, there are some maps where that'll be annoying, you know. It doesn't really apply that much, but technically it can happen, like Mole in Cruci 20. You can be just targeting the tree for forever, and that's slightly annoying, but it's fine because you can only get that in Area 3 or a custom run. And if you've got a Tender Cactus for a custom run, you should be fine. But this passive is a damage multiplier, and as I always say, damage multipliers are just so good, and it just solves your like killing power. You don't have to worry about reflect. You don't have to worry about like people hiding behind other enemies hiding behind other enemies. It's really just such a good passive, and I definitely always try and consider it whenever I see it because it is worth it. It's just straight up worth it. And then we compare that to Molten Mantle. So Molten Mantle has like 3 times the less ping power as Tentacactus does. Unless you're getting really good shots. If you're getting really good shots, Molten Mantle is very fun. You're just tearing through enemies, right? But that's the problem with Molten Mantle. Unless you're all doing it in the one shot, usually you lose your coins. They're gonna run out. You're gonna die. You just lost the boss passive for this. And in the meantime, you can't get coins, so you can barely upgrade. Like most of the time when you're picking up multi-matic, you have maybe 120, 100, maybe let's say 180 cash in the bank. You can't do much with 180 cash. You basically can't pick up this passive as your first boss passive, and it just feels so bad picking up compared to stuff like Tender Cactus. Like I don't know, man. Sure, if I have like a rubble with a House of Slime, with maybe a pumpkin pie, with maybe a multiple passive, I'd be fine to pick up a molten mantle. It would just tear through enemies. But most of the time, I'd rather just have my cash, be able to find another win condition that works, and just use it. Because a lot of the time, what molten mantle is doing is sure, it's finishing out the fights faster. Except you were going to win those fights anyway. You weren't going to lose like any more health anyway. So what was the point of taking molten mantle? And the answer is it's fun passive. It's definitely a fun boss passive, but I think that it's pretty mediocre. Am I happy to put it in like C? Yes. I think that you should rarely ever pick up this boss passive. I do think it has the situations, and I do think that the situations are very fun, but I don't think those situations are very common. Wand of Ultimate Greed. They did buff this thing. It's now 2.5 times gold instead of 2 times gold. I think it could probably be 3, but I'm definitely not someone who really appreciates this passive that much. Look, it's like a fine pickup. There are a lot of situations where I'd be fine to pick it up, and I think that I'd rather pick it up than this thing. Um, there's something really negative about the double cost. It's like every time I see the double cost, I'm just like, oh, why did I pick up this boss passive? And that's definitely unfortunate for it. On average, though, you are meant to get more cash. And like technically, you do lose out on half of your cash value that you were holding when you get the passive, right? Because you can't really access that anymore. But it still is technically meant to be a benefit. And I do think that this boss passive has pretty good synergy with just a whole bunch of stuff like let's go through Peglin Pendant. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere yet. Peglin Pendant, Haglin's, yeah, and I think there may be a few more. Technically, also Molten Mantle, but you probably don't want to be picking up. I don't think you're happy if you're picking up these two as your boss passes, to be perfectly honest. Um, but like, yeah, like it does have some neat synergies, and that's why I definitely do consider it more. But most of the time, yeah, I feel like I read this way too hard. Most of the time, you're probably not going to want to pick this up. I will say, though, one thing I did forget about Molten Mantle. The change to Molten Mantle was actually pretty nice. I'll boost it up just because of the change. The change was that now you can actually gain gold. So suddenly this passive, plant, where's the plant? Here. This passive is just a whole lot better because you can actually farm gold even whilst having Molten Mantle, which is really nice. Defresh Potion. How the Mighty have fallen. Defresh Potion was very consistently one of the strongest passives for ages, and now I'd say it's like medium to late S tier. I think that it's still really good. Losing half your refreshes absolutely sucks. Um, having a peg bag just go completely down the drain is very rough. Having your fresh bandana just not matter whatsoever. I know fresh bandana most always matters. Also just sucks, and generally having access to your refreshes can be helpful in a myriad of ways, so removing them might not be handy. However, as it turns out, much like with constricting chains, Morbid is really good. There are so many ways you can use Morbid so effectively. Peg upgrading, the example I was giving before with Betsy's Hedge and having infinite crits on the board, so you just use the dead pegs instead. There are so many ways, and it's just giving you so much more damage per shot. And as opposed to this +0 +0 +5, which removes one refresh, which can be your only refresh. This one doesn't really remove your only refresh because you're Morbid now. So you can still get decent enough damage to where you can probably close out most fights. Yes, there are some fights you can lose. It's much like constricting chains in that manner. There are some fights where you can just walk into them and you just literally don't have enough damage to get through all these enemies in a good enough time frame that you will just die. However, most of the time, it's going to be very good. It's a very solid passive. Spherides Fate. I think I'll put you like high A tier. I think that you're definitely a passive that I'm happy to get most of the time. As the first boss passive, depending on what I'm doing, I probably don't want to pick it up. I think a lot of the time I probably would want to pick it up, but depends on if I'm doing like multi-procking stuff. I probably don't really want it, as well as it's like not exactly what you're looking for your first boss passive, I'd say. As the second boss passive, though, it's definitely one of the better options. Well, I'd call it one of the better bad options. There are some like premium options, and then like the next good options. It's definitely on the list, and it's definitely pretty high. I'm quite happy to pick this up going into Area 3. It's very solid. You're always going to appreciate the extra orbs on the board is the thing. Well, always. Sometimes you don't. And indeed, I had a lot of issues with Spread ASV when it first released with that exact thing, but most of the time, having extra orbs on the board is just going to be amazing. It's just funny because they're blank orbs, which has bad synergy with some very specific orbs. Leave the rest for later. Well, is it biased if I just do this? I feel like for most of my runs, I just want to leave the rest for later. And a lot of the time, I'm happy to just pick up Leave the rest for later as my first boss passive, and it'll still just be perfectly fine. Even when I have no refresh high roll, I can just find leaf high roll, and it's just so nice to have access to. It has great synergy with so many passives. It has great synergy with so many boss passives. Just all around, it's really, really nice having access to Leaf. You can generally get so much good use out of it. Like in particular, like +0, +5, and then you also find like your refresh also crit, and potentially also Crystallisis Fleece. Like that run's just over. Yeah, there are just so many things that make Leaf so good. And at the baseline, yes, if you pick a Leaf the rest of later up and you're missing like some synergy pieces, you can run out of pegs on your board. It can get to that unfortunate stage of the game. Most of the time, you're going to close out the game before then, and most of the time, you're not actually going to have that issue. You're going to find maybe one thing, and it's going to make it fine. And then maybe you find one more thing, and that one more thing was a refreshing punch, and then suddenly you've won the game. You don't have to actually play the game from that point on. Alright, -3 downgrading, ×2 damage. As I said before, multipliers are amazing, especially when you want to look at stuff like Tender Cactus. I think because of Tender Cactus alone, I think that we can boost this passive up from where it was previously, which I'm not sure if it actually existed previously. But ×2 damage for -3 peg downgrading is pretty decent. This is a passive you got to think about. Most of the time, your situation is not going to benefit from it. Most of the time, it's probably going to be negative. However, if you're sitting there and you're paying Peglin 20, Cruci 20, and you've got a level 3 Dagold, and maybe also like a complex core Power Glove, and you could just take double damage, and maybe also an Echo, right? And just obliterate things, you've seriously got to consider this thing. It works so well. If you have other multipliers as well, it's so good. It has great synergies. It's just a bit hard to pick up a lot of the time. Just a very, yeah, it's a solid passive that you can't pick up most of the time. Heavy Hand, I love the nerfs to this. It used to be so strong, then it used to be so, well, you had to get used to it. And now it's like in a pretty good spot. Every other shot is pretty cool. I think this is just a solid S passive. Most of the time, I'm very happy to pick it up. Honestly, there's grounds for S++. I'm probably just not that used to the change yet. I think that I'm just really happy with this passive a lot of the time. It's a great, oh, I was looking for these passives, but I'll just take this good passive instead, right? Like, a lot of the time I prefer passives in this tier, but if you're going to offer me a Heavy Hand, I'm not going to complain. Like, that's just a very solid passive there. Safety Pegulations. I love Safety Pegulations. It's a very fun passive. Having Pierce is, you could even say, crucial for some comps. For some mods, it just makes them completely insane. Crunching your bomb damage is very unfortunate. I think that Safety Pegulations deserves a solid A tier. Most of the time you see it, you're probably going to want to pick it up. It's generally very decent with the random nonsense that you're going to be trying to do to win the game. However, if it's not, and a lot of the time a decent chunk of the time it's probably not, then you just can't take it. You like need that extra bomb damage. You use targeting orbs and AoE orbs, so you don't use physical damage. Yeah, and in those cases, obviously, you're not really appreciating the safety regulations, but it is nice to have there, and it's just all around like it's definitely a passive that picking it up can just win you the game, but it's not like the go-to passive for that kind of thing for sure. Go for gold. So this is basically old Machuska Show, except minus 2 -3 instead of -2 -2. And let me tell you, that's actually a pretty big difference. Losing one more crit damage is a very, very big deal. It takes you from your level 1 pebbles in area 2 being a 0-1 to being a 0-0, and that just can insta lose you some fights, which you would think makes it harder to pick up, but I've actually had an easier time picking it up recently. And yeah, in case that didn't spoil things, I think this passive is like one of the best in the game. The best boss passive in the game, that is. Yeah, sure, let's just call it the best boss passive in the game. Multi-ball is good. The damage downgrades aren't really that much. Do I need to say more? It's basically just the Machuska shell that I keep rating in S++ for ever. And I would have continued rating it there forever, but it did receive a nerf, and honestly, a very, very cool nerf. I love the change to Machuska shell. Cool. This is unfortunate. Viridian Trinket. I think Viridian Trinket is pretty decent, but I'm struggling putting it higher than like here. Simply because I kind of suck at using Viridian Trinket. It's an issue. I mess up a lot of my shots for Viridian Trinket, and that may just be a Viridian Trinket thing, but I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. I haven't really used it that much because a lot of the time when I do use it, I do make silly mistakes. My shots aren't the best, and it can cause me to like lose a run. However, I do think that on average you are going to hit more pegs with this. I do think it's going to be pretty decent for some orbs. I think that overall it's just a positive boss passive, but I definitely struggle using it for now. Status symbol. I think status symbol is quite good. You need to know that you can take status symbol. And when you can take status symbol, it's just amazing. It can absolutely definitely carry a run for you. Doubling things is really good. Buffs, very good. Debuffs, spicy. I'm going to say spicy because they definitely can be spicy, but whether or not it's actually good is up to you. But yeah, doubling your buffs can be a massive, massive deal. And if you've already got just a consistent way to hit a crit, then there is no downside. So overall, it's just like really, really nice. You're going to appreciate having a status symbol, especially since it has such amazing synergy with other pieces, other buff pieces, other debuff pieces. But you do need to actually find those pieces, and you need to make sure that you're not hitting. So you need to make sure that you're hitting crits, because if you're not, then you are just losing. And it does mean that on average, you're probably killing enemies maybe 1.5 to 2 turns later, but you have a much more explosive power, as well as your late game is probably going to be incredibly, incredibly strong if you can find the right pieces. It's just really, really nice. So that's the tier list done. I think that wow, a lot less things in C, which is pretty impressive. I think honestly that's pretty fair. Let's check that down a tier. I was in the tier previously, and yeah, no, I think it can deserve that. Yeah, a lot of changes. It's evened out more. I had 4 rows in A last time. Okay, I'd say it's evened out more. It's actually remained mostly the same, except honestly, there are a lot more things in S++. I think that the game has changed definitely since Crucible 16 Plus was added. But yeah, it looks like that's my tier list. I may or may not try the same thing that I did previously, where I'd do a run and only pick options based off of how I think it was on the tier list. That was pretty fun last time I did it, and it'll be interesting to see how it works out here. Anyway, let me know if you agree with any of my crazy takes, because I definitely did have some crazy takes here. Maybe there was something else missing for some passives. Maybe there's a massive passive that I'm overlooking that's actually incredible. Like, for example, Torn Sash. I remember for the longest time, I didn't actually know about the interaction of Torn Sash, which is pretty funny because it's like the one thing the passive is meant to do, and it just like never did that thing for me. Anyway, this was fun to do, but it certainly took a while.